is Hard Parking with Jay Finning, brought to you by Right Honda out of Scottsdale, Arizona. Coming up in just a few moments, I had a conversation with a gentleman named Kenny Tran who owns Jotech Motorsports. Kenny and we met many years ago. We kind of were neighbors, but not really. He lived in one apartment complex. I lived in the other apartment complex. And back then, you would always recognize other imports that were around, on the streets of Dallas, probably anywhere. So if you're not familiar with Jotech Motorsports, they built a really big name in the GTR world. They are doing some amazing things with the C8 platform of the Corvette, played with Lamborghinis, and basically anything that you can modify and move fast. I know Kenny Tran for being not only a neighbor that I didn't really know personally, just kind of knew his name and waved and went to go see him participate at drag racing events. But, he did some magic with a Civic on a drag strip. So we talk about that world. We talk about Jotech, obviously. But Kenny also came over from Vietnam as a child. And so I wanted to kind of jump in and ask him about that experience. And I think you're going to really enjoy the perspective that he has, not only on life, but some of the things that they went through to get here is the United States. Kind of makes you think that some of this crap that other people are going through kind of pale in comparison, but it's all relative. It's all crappy. And I don't know if there's a better way to do it. I'm sure there is, but people love to talk about the problems, but no one ever really throws out solutions or solutions that are realistic, I would say. So this last weekend, we did a cruise to Jerome. If you listened to the episode last weekend, which hopefully you did, it was with Monique and Edgar Milian of Arizona Adventure Group. And we teamed up with them. We, as in One Auto Movement, teamed up with them and Arizona Trek, which is off-roading and all sorts of stuff outdoors, and did a cruise. We had 23 cars, took the street route. We had 23 trucks plus my SUV, which everyone made fun of me, especially my friend Ed said 23 trucks and a car. So 23 and me. But we made it. The Infinity, man, let me tell you guys something. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. I think that is the lesson of the weekend. The off-road trail was advertised as two-wheel friendly. And for people who haven't been on the trail, it's like, okay, well, yeah, you can go on there as long as you have a two-wheel drive vehicle. You can take like a Subaru or something. You don't necessarily have to have a big lifted truck. You don't have to have any of that stuff. You should be fine. Okay, I'll take the Infinity, skip the road course, because I know I know a lot more people driving on the streets than I do driving off-road. It's my opportunity to kind of meet some new people and have a little fun. And I've tried the off-road thing before, and one time it worked out, and a couple times it worked out. One time it didn't. Had to turn around and leave before I got myself in over my head. This time, well, what two-wheel drive friendly really means is no steep inclines and no steep declines where you wish you had four-wheel drive or all-wheel drive. That is what that really means. Because here's the thing. When you stop to go on a trail, if all the trucks with you are letting air out of their tires to make their contact patch with the rocks and the rough terrain a softer ride, and also, not only is it a softer ride for people in the cabin, but it kind of gives the rock and the rubber on the tire a little more give and room, a little easier on your suspension. That should tell you something. Again, we made it through and we had a good time, but it was very nerve-wracking. And I bottomed out a couple times on rocks. But the Infinity, the bottom of it, at that point, it's like, okay, hopefully you don't puncture your oil pan. But the problem was we were kind of holding up the last third of the vehicles. And at one point we finally got to a stop sign that the terrain kind of evened out a little bit better. It wasn't necessarily good, but it was a lot better than what we had just gone through for the last 10 plus miles. And I pulled over and took some video of all the cars going by. And one of the ladies on the trek, she waited for us to get back in front, which was really nice of her. So she brought up the rear of that. And it was a hell of a lot of fun. First time we've ever done anything like that. We're hoping to do something like that every year now. And hopefully it'll grow into a huge, huge adventure with a lot of sponsors and a lot of cool things going on. So big shout out to Arizona Adventure Group. Big shout out to AZ Trek. And of course, the One Auto Movement that I'm a part of and happy to be a part of. We're going to get to Kenny Tran right after this message from 4Wheel Online. Jay Finning here, and I want to tell you guys about 4Wheel Online. For over a decade, 4Wheel Online has been bringing the best truck accessories and truck parts to enhance the appearance and performance of all trucks and SUVs. They are dedicated to providing an extensive range of upgrades that will match any maker model on the road. The truck products cover everything you need to give your truck a custom look and added functionality. And if you need a tire and wheel package, head over and use the configuration tool. They carry all the major brands of wheels and tires, so go get outfitted today. So visit them online at 4Wheel Online or call them at 813-769-2451. Again, that's 4Wheel Online, the number 4 Wheel Online. Kenny freaking Tran, Jotech Motorsports, thank you for joining the Hard Parking Podcast.
Thanks for having me. It's been a long time.
It has been a long time, and I talked about this a little bit before, but it's kind of a funny story, and I'll share it with you a little bit. That, I remember when I got my DC2 GSR Integra, and I was in one apartment complex, and every once in a while I'd see like these modified, I don't remember if it was a CRX or maybe it was just a hatchback with Jotech on it. And so, us car kids, especially back in the day, I don't know if they do it so much now, but anytime you saw another like little modded import or just another little import, you always kind of waved at them.
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes you would actually flip around and run them down and start a conversation with them.
Yeah, it was a small community.
Yeah.
So I could remember every single car that went down the street and say, oh, okay, we worked on that one. Oh, that one we didn't. That one, oh, that's Jay over there. That's Tony over there. So it was a small community back then, but now forget about it. It's a huge market.
Yeah, and it's crazy too because one of my best friends, he's still a good friend of mine now, was with Intercrew. Remember Intercrew, Fee and Intercrew Auto Salon?
Oh, yeah, I do.
So I was like, okay, do I do the Jotech thing or do I do like the Intercrew thing? Because my friend is Intercrew. I was like, all right, let me just go ahead and do the Intercrew thing. And I don't know if they're still doing it these days, but I felt like back then there was kind of like this shop versus shop competition. Our street cars are better than your street cars. Our show cars are better than your show cars. And it's just one of those things. I was like, God damn, I wish I would have gone with Jotech. For years, I was like, man, it's such a cool shop.
It's so weird back then because we were competing almost in the same space, and it was like, kind of like a rivalry deal, right? Where it's like, we got to beat their car, we got to go faster than them, and we would go to the end of the earth trying to find parts, trying to make it faster and beat the guy next to us. It was very competitive. I don't see that as much nowadays. Now it's about, get your car out into the track, run it by yourself, post it on YouTube and Instagram, and there you go. That's racing nowadays, right? It's not head-to-head competition as much.
Yeah, and then I want to talk about that a little bit coming up, and also with the announcement of the C8 Z06. I know you work on the C08 platform. I mean the C8 platform. Let's go back to your humble beginnings. So you had moved to Texas from Vietnam. Do you remember what that was like? I mean, it's got to be somewhat of a blur, but maybe not.
No, I remember pretty vividly. So 74 is when I was born, and that's when, my family was trying to get everybody out of the country, but I was too young. This was, 74 is when I was born, and right then and there, my parents had to pretty much sent my 2 older brothers away because, they're in their teenage years. They, as soon as you turn 16, 17, they automatically draft you into the army. And that's pretty much it. Your life is over, there's no education, and they're going to brainwash you, and that's it. You're part of their system. You know what I mean? So my parents gave the money to, people like, over here you call them coyote, where they can just sneak you out of the country. That's what we did. We gave away most of our assets to bring the 2 older kids over here. And, they came over here with no money, and we were stuck in Vietnam. So we had to, work again, because when the communists come in, they practically take everything away from you. You're part of a communist socialist party now, so owning, so we used to own a business back then, and that was gone. So long story short, it's just, we trying to come over here to the U.S. to get better education, more opportunities, and so forth. So we had to do it the legal way. So we had to file paperwork. We had to have sponsors. So my uncle, he fled the country, so he came over here first. So he became our sponsor. So in order for you to do paperwork and be sponsored, he has to have housing. He has to provide a job. He has to make enough income in order to sponsor my family to come over, because we're a family of 7 kids, So we had to show proof of all that. And prior to that, you have to go to school and learning enough English to be productive, right? So they interview you. So they have people in Vietnam that interview to make sure that you have enough English in your background. If you don't, they send you to the Philippines, and you have to stay in a camp for 6 months to learn English before you could go to the U.S.
Wow.
So the process of, it is relevant today because, how we're talking about immigration now.
Sure. Yep.
So it's very hard to get into the U.S. and you have to have all those checkbox before you could come. So we did all that, and finally 84 was when gave us the okay to come. And so we basically were on different commercial flights. I mean, any flights that they can stuff us into the back of the plane, you know what I mean? So we went to Thailand, and then from there, more interviews you have to pass, take all your vaccine shots and everything. And we stay at this prison camp. It used to be a prison. So they converted it into a refugee camp. So we stayed there, just slept on the floor, bathed in the same bucket of water. It was pretty disgusting,
Yeah.
So I remember everything pretty vividly, kind of like, seeing what's on TV now. It's like, oh, I was one of those kids,
Yeah. Or are you ever like, you think they have it bad type of deal?
Yeah. I mean, when you're a kid, you don't know much. At that age,
sure.
You just feel like, oh, okay, it's just another fair, right? So because it's
par
in
for
Vietnam,
the
you go
course.
to a fair, yeah. You just move along wherever your parents go. That's where you go. So so we came over here with pretty much nothing. My dad started as a custodian. My mom worked in a factory. Any job, anything that we could find, from garage sale that was cheap, that we could make sure, live, eat, whatever. That's what you have to do. So, at a young age, I saw the struggle. So I hated being poor.
Right.
I hated being poor. I think that's one of the main driving force for me to work so hard the way that I do. It's because of that.
Was it witnessing the struggles and having to go to those things? Was it an embarrassment thing, like going to school where kids like fucking with you?
Oh yeah. That's the number one.
Those kids
thing.
are cruel as hell.
Because, because I remember, because I had one pair of socks, maybe 2 pair of shorts, 2 pair of shirts, and I was wearing the same pair of socks. I have to wash them every day, and and the crazy thing is my socks was yellow. it was yellow with a couple of white stripes.
Yeah,
right? So
yeah.
It was very noticeable. You know what I mean? So yeah, a lot of kids were making fun of me because of it, and the list just go on and on, man. It wasn't like how it is today. So bullying that's just part of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're just gonna have to grow thick skin, and it is what it is. You come home, you tell your parents say, just, hey, toughen up, kid. That's what, you don't want to be poor. You're going to have to work. So
yeah. And
you're going to have to study hard.
And at least then, right? I mean, not to go off on a side tangent, but because you have your own children, but the bullying at least was contained to your immediate people, like your immediate circle, the kids you saw at school. There's no way to reach you online and none of that other shit.
Right.
I can't even imagine.
Right. Yeah, you can't even imagine today. But yeah, it was, I guess it was, for me, I think looking back on it, it taught me a lot.
Sure.
It was definitely a necessary evil for me to get over that hump and learn how to be strong,
Yeah, man, because I think the thought going into that is, okay, you move, and the assumption is you move with other people from Vietnam. You're not just a Vietnamese family in the middle of like a white neighborhood in Dallas, I would think. But even in that case, if that is the case, there's still kids that may have been born here in the States or been here longer. And it's like, okay, this is a new kid. These are the new kids because you have siblings. These are the ones we're going to mess with so that no one messes with us. So in theory, you think you'd feel more safer, but at the same time, it's like, damn, you're getting it from every angle. Is that correct?
It's pretty much at every angle because the town that I moved into, it was at the time, it was North Houston. It was in Humble.
Yep.
So it was myself and another kid, a Filipino kid. His name is Francisco. And we were the only two Asian kid in the whole school.
Wow.
Right. So
Yeah.
so we got to school and we didn't speak barely any English, or it wasn't enough to survive even in homeroom class, right? So immediately, we see all the kids, they're going to the regular classes, and then me and Francisco would wait in the lobby and wait for believe it or not, I rode the short bus. the short bus would come with other handicapped kids and foreign kids from other school in the district. So they would take us to a different school, teach us ESL, which is English as Second Language. And so all the foreign kids and handicapped kids would go to this one particular school that's just only set up for that. And they would, teach you from the basic, from start to finish. And then when they're done, the short bus would pick us up, take us back to our normal school. And we get to go into our, I think, homeroom class,
right?
For one period, and then that's it. We have lunch and then go home. Actually, lunch was served at the ESL school, but you could imagine being a foreign kid that don't have any friends and dress weird and look different. So of course, because
there's a clash in everything, right? Because even if you're born an Asian American, you're still one of two Asian kids in the school, so you're still gonna get it,
right?
Especially when we grew up, right? Like now, it's normal, it's cool to be that one person, but in Texas, it was just different.
Yeah, in Texas it was different. So Houston, so we lived there for a couple of years, and then when we moved to Arlington, there were more Vietnamese, and it's more of a melting pot up here in Dallas. So going to the school system up here, I made more friends, and now I know a little bit more English, and I gotten along better with going to school and everything. So the transition didn't take that long. So I mean, in short, it was like maybe a couple years or so before got kind of integrated and got used to the system.
Before we get to Jotech, I do have some questions based on some of the stuff that I just heard. Number one, knowing that, because I believe you had stated that your uncle, he had paid to come over, so just like your brothers, you had paid the family had paid someone to bring them over here versus you and the rest of your siblings having to go through the process.
Right.
What are your thoughts? Do you have any thoughts either way? Because some of the people in your family came over, I guess, undocumented, and the other half came over documented. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, they had to leave for sure. In Vietnam, if you had any kind of businesses or even any kind of association with the South Vietnamese Army or interpreter or anything like that, you don't want to be there, because eventually they'll find out and you're going to pay for it. I don't know exactly, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like what's going on right now in Afghanistan, so if you have any kind of association with the US Army or anything like that, they're going to view you as an enemy and they're going to treat you like one. So they didn't have a choice. They have to abandon their family, their possession, everything that they own. They have to leave. It's either that or their life. You know what I mean? I don't know the extent how bad it is, obviously, because I'm just a kid, but they were, from what, just hearing from the stories, I know they're scared for their life. So they have no choice. They either pack up and leave or, be prosecuted.
I mean, it sounds terrible. But I know some people who are here who came over or have, through like Mexico or somewhere else, and they say, okay, we did it the right way. Everybody needs to do it the right way. I think there are extenuating circumstances. So it's kind of like everybody says it should be this way or that way, but no one's really offering solutions on how to get there. So that's just kind of one of those things.
Right. Yeah, it's one of those things. I mean, the majority of the people that are trying to come into this country, they're trying to get away from a bad situation. They're trying to get away from a bad government.
Yeah.
So you do have to sympathize. You do have to lend a helping hand to help them, just like how we came over. But there's going to be a small percentage of that population that's going to be drug dealers and so forth that you just can't. But you have to get vetted out. You have to know
Yeah.
who's coming in. So it's a pretty hard situation I can imagine for everybody right now.
Especially trying to figure out who writes those policies. So going what you've gone through and having it impact your personal family and kind of witnessing what's going on, is there ever a part of you, and I don't mean to paint you into a corner here, because as someone who was born in America, I could say they don't. But I mean, do you ever look back and see all these riots and see these things and say that, gosh, I mean, do we not appreciate what we have here? And that's not to say that. Yeah, I was gonna say that's not to say that. Well, we should just be happy with the way things are. But I mean, shit is pretty fucked up in other countries.
I think you've never seen or never been or live in this situation. You really don't know, and you take things for granted. That's kind of natural for all of us to do that, right?
Yeah.
Myself living here for so long, I feel that sometimes I feel like it's my right. No, it's privilege. It's not your right.
Yes.
It's a privilege to be here. So I have to remind myself that quite often. But I think it's different for people that are born here. Because if you haven't traveled or seen different culture or experience it firsthand, it's kind of hard for you to have that
perspective.
Perspective.
I agree on that. And life is all relative, right? I mean, you could have a perfect life and then all of a sudden you get a flat tire and it's your worst day ever. But that's like, okay, well, I think I've had worse days, but it's not their fault. They just haven't experienced anything. Let's move to Jotech. Yeah. So your brother-in-law started Jotech, if I recall correctly, in 95.
Mm-hmm.
And you originally worked for your brother-in-law at Jotech. My biggest question before we even go into that is the origins of the name. What does Jotech actually mean?
So my brother-in-law, his name is Johnny Huynh.
Okay.
So we were, just sitting around trying to come up with a name to start. And, that's where the Joe came from, the Johnny.
Got it.
So we had, so that's where it came from.
So you worked for him for free. Tell us a little bit about what that was like. And was that kind of like an escape from all the BS in school? Because you were still, you weren't necessarily a school age at that point, but what else were you doing before you decided to work for him at Jotech?
Man, at that time, I was going to school. I was in a community college. Didn't really have a direction. So I was only taking, basic classes, business, administration, marketing and some other just prerequisite class because I didn't know what I was going to do. And, he came over here for a visit and, that's he used to work at Pan Auto, which is another high performance shop in San Diego. So when he came over here and he asked me, hey, can you show me around some of the high performance shops around here?
Right.
And I had no clue, that there was any import shop here. So the only shop that was well known here in the North Dallas area was Super Shops back in the days.
Yeah.
So I took them there, and they only had domestic parts there. The only thing that you could buy and put on your imports was the tires from BF Goodrich. They're the only one that had the low profile tires back then, right? So anybody that had a drop Honda or anything like that, you had to go there to buy tires from them. But they didn't have any exhaust, suspension, intake, nothing. They don't have anything. So he saw it as an opportunity to start a business here and be one of the first one. And I think here in Dallas we were. There was another import shop in Arlington, and they do special deliveries, special orders only from Japan. And which is just a small little bitty shop. It's called A to Z Tuning.
Yeah.
So they were importing a lot of truss and Grady products back then, and we saw that was the only competition on the other side of town. So we're like, okay, this is a new venture. Nobody over here ever seen it, heard of it, or anything like that. So we had a head start on it, you know.
During that time, I didn't really pay attention to anything. And I mean, shit, I don't even know I was getting in trouble. I was like, I don't even know what the hell I was doing in 95. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, back then it was, you're, a lot of things I can't say on the podcast that I did.
Yeah. I mean, I did a bunch of stupid shit back then. So was that was it Richland? Is that the name of it? Was that?
Yeah. Richland Community College.
You want to know why I didn't go? You're going to laugh at
Why?
me. And this is dumb. The 45-year-old in me right now is like, Jesus. I mean, everything I've ever done has led me to the point where I'm at right now talking to you on this. So, it's water under the bridge. But I hated high school so much that when I went to Richland and did the evaluation test to get in and got accepted. I mean, it's kind of funny to say, wow, you got accepted to a community college? Yeah. Wow. Good for you. But I looked up and it's like everybody from high school went to Richland. And I didn't want to have, in a sense, a 13th grade. I didn't want to see the people that I didn't like, right? I didn't want to see the people I didn't like in high school. I said, so fuck this. I'm not going. I'll just go to some other college. And then I had nothing to do. And then I started getting in trouble, So once I got out of trouble, I finally went to college in 99 out of state. But that's why I didn't go to Richland.
That's why. Yeah. Well, I didn't have a choice.
Yeah.
I mean, that was the cheapest college for us to, that was closest to us to go, So, obviously I wanted to go to UT or elsewhere, but it's just, the money wasn't there. That was not in the cards, So it is what it is.
It definitely is what it is. You worked for Jotech, right? And then you ended up buying the business in 97.
Yeah. So what was crazy was that, 2 years going into it, it was kind of really difficult to get it off the ground.
Yeah.
Because could you imagine, bringing this brand new platform, a Honda Civic, and there's no room for a Honda Civic here in Texas. Come on. If we live in, domestic country here. This is Camaro, Mustang, Corvette, Vipers. That's all you're going to see all day long here in trucks, right? So bringing a little Honda Civic to the street race was a joke. It was a hard sell. When we roll up, people would just kind of like, oh, that's cute. Makes a bunch of noise. What is it going to do? So, selling the idea of having modding a little 4-cylinder economy car was a pretty tall task, right? There were a few that bought into it, but it didn't take off as hard as we hoped, So we did a lot of, guerrilla marketing. I mean, I remember my friend, one of my friends, he worked at a local bank here, but he had access to the printing machine. So I was literally copying and cutting, pasting and gluing, all these pictures of exhaust system, suspension, and made my own flyers on a piece of paper and then Photoshop it with this photocopy machine and go into the local colleges, high school, and just putting it on people's car, specifically, the Japanese import cars. So that's what we were doing, going to the clubs and stuff like that, just word of mouth, and it took a long time for it to take off. But, after 2 years of it, he just kind of saw that the business was just kind of leveling out. It wasn't really taking off as fast as he thought. And, the opportunity for us to, for me, I didn't have any money at the time. I was just, helping him out. I was pretty much just me and him. And at the time, I didn't have any money to buy the business or anything like that. But I knew this is what I wanted to do. I mean, I was working for free for the first 6 months, and then eventually I think I got a raise to $600 a month,
Balling.
So I was balling when I had $600. I went out and I bought a brand new Acura Integra, and all my money went to that car payment, right? That's how smart I was with my money back then. So you can tell, right? But I didn't have any money. I couldn't even buy the tools for the business or anything like that. But I went to my another brother-in-law, and he was well respected in my family. And, he had a little bit of money. My dad, my parents at that time, we were still living in the government housing, right? So he, during all that time, he saved up enough money to buy this laundromat, this rundown laundromat for, I think, like 17 grand, right? It was graffiti painted everywhere. Glass were broken. half of the dryer and half of the washer doesn't even work. There's water floods on the floor. I mean, this place was a disaster, right? So he bought it, fixed it up, what have you. And during the same time, I was helping him with the laundromat, doing the bundle service and stuff like that, and working at Jotech at the same time. And then, I convinced my other brother-in-law. I said, hey, this is what I want to do. I want to drop out of school and I want to work on cars. This is what I want to do. So I came up with a business plan, presented to him, and because he's got a lot of weight in my family to say something, you know what I mean? So we presented to my dad and say, oh, hey, and I went as far as I was so confident of bringing in new business and just working overtime, doing whatever it takes to survive, to make money, that I even put everything on the line. And I told my dad, I'm like, Dad, we're selling about $30,000 gross right now. If we take over and I just need a little bit of cash to do marketing and get inventory in and so forth, I'll guarantee you I'll double it in a month. Right. So that was my guarantee. Let's say, hey, I want to drop out of school. Getting a business degree is not in the cards for me. I don't want to do anything else. You know how Asian parents are. They tell you either become an engineer, or
a nurse.
Or a nurse, or
yeah.
You know what I mean, or a pharmacist. That's pretty much that's all we know. Either that, or if you don't have an education, then go open up a business, nail salon, laundromat, whatever.
Right.
That's just a typical Asian mindset,
yep.
Right? Becoming a grease monkey it wasn't glamorous.
It's not typical.
Right?
Yeah.
It wasn't. Yeah, it wasn't something that you want to brag about. It wasn't something that you say, oh yeah, one of my son, he's one is an engineer, the other one is a grease monkey.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it was a hard sell to my family to borrow the money to purchase the business to do it for me. But finally, the word was yes, and I was like, oh man, I was so excited. I was re-energized, renew. I mean, now I can fully quit school and just focus on the business, because at the same time I was still going to school part-time, So so I took over, and that's how I started. And I bust my ass 24/7. There was no sleep. I wanted to prove a point. I wanted to prove the point that it will not fail. So I didn't have a choice.
Right. For the listeners, mm-hmm. Jotech before you took over was doing 30,000 in the black annually, right?
Yeah.
And then
30,000 a month.
Oh, 30,000 a month in sales, which sounds pretty good, but
mm-hmm.
What did you end up doing with that, right? You ended up doubling it, right?
Yeah, I was, on the first month of me taking over, I doubled it to 60,000. So you have to keep in mind the products that we sell was pretty expensive for the time. For 1997 or 1998, for somebody to come up with $590 for an exhaust system,
mm-hmm.
that's a lot. So, just to scratch the surface, you do an exhaust system, air intake, and headers, parts and labor installed, you're pretty close to $1,500 to $2,000. You see what I mean?
Yep. So, I'd gladly pay $590 for that in 2021 for a decent brand.
Yeah. So that was a really high ticket item. Plus, you got to pay for the import tax, the shipping, and all that stuff. So that was so everything that we had was, again, the margin wasn't that much, but it was just the revenue. You need the cash flow to get a lot of these items in, because, we only had maybe at the time 15 points of margins, and then you have to pay for a lot of the shipping as well. So it wasn't a whole lot.
So but I know you.
I was focused on the future, though. That's all I was focused on.
Right.
But just get more customers. Mm-hmm.
So we're talking to you as the owner of Jotech. I've known you as the neighbor and the driver of Jotech, but you weren't always the driver. Something happened on a trip to Houston. You want to tell us about that?
Yeah,
the night that changed a couple lives.
The night that changed. Yeah, that was very unfortunate. So I was never in the position to drive. At that time, we had great friend and customer that we sponsor. We helped him build his car, and he was driving and representing us at the racetrack. And at that time, I forgot the name of the organization that came in, where we meet, once or twice a year down in Houston for this race. So all the quickest and fastest import go down to Houston at this race to, showcase what
was it like Nopi or something?
No,
or
it was
ID
before
drags?
that.
Yeah.
ID Drag Wars or something like that, right? So we all got together, and there was a group of maybe 10, 15 of us, and we caravan at night driving down there. We're all supposed to meet at a hotel, and the my friend Tom, the guy that we sponsor as a driver, he's got a flat. He's got a flat on his tire, so we pull over on the side of the road to to see what's going on and fix it. So inside my car was my mom and my girlfriend at the time. So I remember it was sitting in my I forgot what it was. I forgot what car I was in, but we were so close to Houston already. We were in at where the Woodlands at, north of Houston. So we were only like 30 minutes away from the hotel that we were staying. So everybody pulled over on the side of the road, on the service road. And I came up and I'm like, all right, fine. Hey, you guys want to fix this? I'm only about 30 minutes away. It's getting late. Let me just drop off my mom at my sister's house, and then I'll come back and meet you guys. You guys just go ahead. So at that time, Arthur worked for me, one of the technicians. And I told him, I said, hey, do you want to just fix it, and then I'll meet you back on the road. Just give me a call. So I left. I took my mom to my sister's house, and I received a phone call. And whoever called me said, hey, man, there's a big old accident. Tom got hurt. He's at the ambulance is coming. I mean, it was just pandemonium, right?
Right.
So I dropped off my mom and my girlfriend. I immediately rushed back to the scene. And, so what happened was, they were standing on the side of the road waiting for the car to get fixed. And a drunk driver just lost control of the car and plowed directly into the group where they were just standing on the side on the service road. And, the truck plowed into the car, and that car hit Tom and Arthur, who is my technician. And Tom, obviously, he got hurt really bad. They ended up amputating one of his legs. And Arthur is hurt too. So Arthur still have a limp to this day,
Yeah.
But yeah, so that was a nasty accident. Drunk driver pretty much ruined everything, So yeah.
But because of that,
so yeah, and so because of that, after that, it was pretty bad. And after all the dust settled and everything, we have to get back on our feet and get back out there again to have a car to represent Jotech again. So I went out and I bought a Honda Civic, and I started fixing it up and start learning how to drive that car. And obviously as a kid and back then, did a lot of street racing. So a lot of it was learned as we go, as I learn on the street. And it's not something that I'm proud of, but that's all we had,
I mean, we did it before Fast and Furious, right? Down on Royal Lane and shit like that.
Yeah, Royal Lane, Manana,
Yep,
Luna Road. We were all down there. I remember it was at least 200-300 cars down there just hanging out on the weekend.
Cop shows up and people scatter. Thousands of people scatter.
We paid the price. I went to jail many times for that.
Oh, really? God.
I knew the routine. When I got pulled over, I was like, okay, you guys bail me out. I know what's coming.
Yeah, so that's how you got kind of thrust into. I mean, you did some, back in Humboldt, Texas, some driving and stuff too. But as far as on behalf of Jotech, as the driver of Jotech, that incident that night kind of put you in that position eventually.
Yeah. I had to take the lead on it. It was a scary deal.
Oh yeah,
it was definitely. Yeah, it puts it's a reality check that you could get hurt anytime doing this, for sure.
First big break at Pomona?
99. That was first big break. nobody have ever heard or seen of us in Pomona, because all the media coverage, all the magazine coverage is on the West Coast, right? And it's either West Coast or East Coast, because Frank Choi from Battle of the Imports, he used to have a caravan, a truck that he sends 10 cars over there to the East Coast at E-Town, or go to AGCO for the American race. So all the coverage is always on the East Coast or West Coast. So Texas didn't get any love, you know what I mean? So when I decided to bring my car out to Cali, it was kind of like, it's definitely different, because here at home, we have a lot of friends, family, everybody comes out, cheer for us, and hey, what's up, Kenny, this and that, So when we were in Pomona, it was just like nice and quiet. Nobody comes by. It's like, oh, this is weird. This is nice. So we nobody come to our pit at all. Everybody was giving, Lisa, Ed, Bergenholtz, and Stefan, everybody's over there checking out their cars. We're just a no-name team from Texas, you know what I mean? So we were out there, and unfortunately, we broke the world record, the front-wheel drive record that was held there in California by Ed Bergenholtz for quite some time. I think I think that record never left California. They at that time, they pretty much owned that front-wheel drive market, so we came over there and out of nowhere, and we broke the world record, and that put us on the map for sure.
Could you imagine the number of people stepping up to be part of Jotech? Whereas, once you set that record in Pomona, I mean, what did that look like? Was it, because I know that, and I've listened to you before, and I kind of have the same mindset. It's not necessarily give me everything. It's let's work out some sort of a deal where I can represent you as a sponsor, and I can improve my product, and by improving my product with your help, then we can grow together. As opposed to just saying like, hey man, I want to be a partner of yours. Like, could you have imagined what happened because of you breaking that record in 99?
It opened up a lot of doors and opportunities for us. A lot of manufacturers, they came to us and they say, hey, we want to sponsor you. We got this clutch, we have this intake manifold, we have this suspension, we have these tires that's going to work. You're going to need this, or help us develop it, help us get it to the market. So we had a lot of opportunities to partner up with a lot of manufacturers and companies that help us with products and sponsors. And, right after that, the following year, I mean, it was just steamrolled, because that's when the market really took off. And, we're on the map, we broke the record, we got the media coverage. So everything was just kind of compounded and help us, really, really steamroll the business, So, we had the car revamped, repainted. We came out strong with new team uniform. We bought truck and trailer. So we start buying new asset to make our team bigger and better. So that's that. It really spawned out of control, and the Fast and Furious movie came around and everything, and the rest is history. But we were doing it way before the movie came out. So when we saw the movie, it was just it was just an afterthought that that's not the correct representation of what we do, but okay, let's roll with it.
Right.
It's good for business.
I was gonna say it's great for business.
Oh yeah, because we sold a ton of APC tail lights and nitrous kit and so forth. That's what everybody wanted it.
Of course, I remember having those.
It was silly. It was silly at the time, but it was refreshing, because you have people that were not in the industry, people mainstream were coming into our shop and wanted to know about our business, that wanted to know, hey, we've just bought this car, what can we do to it? So it really helped. It really helped the whole industry.
I had a Greddy turbo on my Integra, and I had people ask me why I'd have two radiators, and I was like, no, that's an intercooler.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
2001 Import Challenge winner. Is that the magazine cover?
Man,
on Turbo Magazine.
On Turbo Magazine, 2011.
Was that from 99? No, 2001.
That's
2001.
2001. That's a different race.
Because over the next 10 years, right, through 2008, 2009, it's like the import scene, the import drag race scene was, like we started off talking earlier, was kind of heavy and gaining traction Why do you think it fell off at the end of the first set of the 2000s?
I think it kind of fell off right around, I would say around 2007, around there. That's when it kind of took a big dip. Um, Couple of things. I mean, because you had too many racing organizations. You had IDRC, you have NOPI, you had Drag Wars, you had NHRA, Sport Compact, and then there's many others that spawn up locally as well. So you have like 7, 10 different racing organizations. So all the racers were split.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
so in order for you to run for any kind of championship, you have to follow a series. So when you follow a series and there's 7 different series, guess what?
Yeah.
Where the fans don't know where to go. You know, they're doing all marketing all over the place, and so we were all split up everywhere. So there wasn't enough money to go around for sponsorship. There wasn't a lot of attention to the grassroots racers, the guys that started like me, that didn't have any sponsor, the guys that are doing it out of their own pocket. There were no coverage for them. There were not enough payout for them. There were sponsors and so forth, right? So for them to follow the series, it was nearly impossible because the amount of money that it takes to get to the track and what you're able to win first place doesn't even pay for gas to get back home. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So it was lopsided. So they could only do it for so many races for so many years before they run out of money, and then they start dropping out because they don't see the light at the end of the tunnel. So I see that, you know, I feel for them. There's only so much money in the sponsorship to go around, and the racing organization that were there at that time, it was too they were too big. You know what I mean? They didn't listen to the racer. They didn't cater to the racer. It was catering to the corporate, to the sponsors. You know, so they didn't put back. They didn't put back. That I feel like, you know, if you had to turn back the clock and you nurture the smaller classes and you let it grow and you build them up, so that way they have a stepping stone to become a professional racer, that they could gain the sponsorship to help them pay and follow the series. It could have become something.
And then, you know, the state of the economy was, I mean, that's what everyone points at during those years too. That couldn't have helped at all.
Exactly. Either. Right. So when that happened, that was it. That was what's gonna break the camel's back, you know, because 2008, when that collapsed, everybody was, you know, selling their race cars, and they say, okay, that's enough. We had enough of that. and sponsors are pulling out, obviously, because that's the first thing they're going to cut is going to be marketing dollars, you know. So timing was impeccable for it to collapse the way it did.
At this point, modern day with Jotech, are you just more of like the team owner? Do you ever actually get back in the car? Or do you have people who do that for you?
I still do it. I still get down and do some of the installs and some of the newer cars that comes in. I'm always interested in working on and learning on a new platform. So I'm always involved in these type of projects. That's, you know, it's fun to me.
As far as when the light turns green, like sitting in the car, flying down the lane as a racer.
Yeah. I still love it. I still get butterflies. I still get nervous. I still get nervous. You know, so I always tell myself, you know, if I still get a little bit of butterflies and get nervous and scared for my life, okay, I'm doing it.
Yeah, Tom Brady actually says that too. Every time he goes out to play a game, he gets butterflies, and I think people find it hard to believe. That just means it's more real. Like, what's the most fear you've had? There has to be some point where you're sitting there, and then have you ever just all of a sudden been like, fuck, what am I doing? Or is it just kind of like it's the same butterflies every time and just keep your cool?
When I see another driver get hurt or crash or a death at a racetrack or anything like that, that scares me.
Mm-hmm.
That makes it difficult to put on my helmet again. And I do remember one year, again, we were at Pomona, and I remember they had a forest fire, or a desert fire over there, and it was smoky, ashy everywhere. And it was that one year that there were a lot of ash that came down, uh, covering the track, and we continued to race on that track. And on that day, John Lingenfelter had his four-cylinder turbocharged Cobalt out there, and he was set on breaking the world record for the fastest import. And I remember it was a really bad accident that happened, and he went, flying through the end of the track, and the car ended up flipping in the sand pit, and it eventually caused his death. And I remember, standing at the line, looking at that run, and the following day found out what happened, and then we continue. I think we stayed till Monday,
Right.
and to continue the race. And for some reason, I just didn't feel like racing after that.
Sure.
I'm like, oh shit, I could lose my life, I could lose my family. What the hell my kid's gonna do without me? This, that kind of, you get all those
Mhm.
thoughts going through your head. So it's kind of difficult to put on your helmet after that.
Did you take a mental break then for a little while, or was that just kind of like you're thinking about it and then you're back into the car?
It obviously slows you down. You're
Yeah.
not as brave, you're not as reckless.
Mhm.
You're more sensitive to the car when something like this happened. So getting back into it, you just don't feel that. I lost that warrior spirit.
Yeah.
Whereas before, I don't care what happens.
Mhm.
Put me in the car. Let's go. We gotta make this pass. I mean, it was that type of mentality. So after that happened, we kind of just, it caused me to slow down a little bit, look at things at a slower rate, look into safety more, caring about safety more, um, and ultimately just wanting to build a car that's going to be safer for myself and everybody.
It's interesting because you always knew it was there. It was a very real thing that could happen, but I guess being able to witness it and being at the event, it just sets things in so much a different perspective.
Yeah, that it could end. It could end anytime, any minute, and then that's the part that scares me till today.
So Jotech has been around for 20 something years, 28 years, 25 years, a lot of years. And one thing that's
Yeah.
amazing to me, because every once in a while I actually check in on Jotech, usually when I'm digging through my papers and I find some old stuff, I'm like, oh, is Jotech still around? And it's very surprising in a good way that not only is Jotech still around in 2021, but Kenny Tran, the guy I'm talking to right now, is still very much a part of it. Because you would think, with the ups and downs of the economy and just kind of wearing through and I would have expected for it to be sold once or twice over, but it's still the same raw product. And I've noticed, in the mid to late 2000s, with the GTR coming out being 80% of your business at one point in time, and all the different things that you've managed to just transcend over new platforms. I mean, it's difficult. This firsthand from being there in the 90s. It's difficult for a shop like that to survive 10 years, much less 20 years. What has been kind of the driving force to keep you going? Was it your humble beginnings?
That has a lot to do with it. The other major component I would have to credit to my family and my team here. They're my extended family, and they're the backbone of this company. They're very important to this company. They care. They take ownership. The guys that's been with me, and you met Tony, Jason. They've been here with me for over 15, 18 years.
It's amazing.
My nephew, Kevin, he's been out at the racetrack since he was 8 years old. So he's been coming up here to Jotech to mop the floor, clean, go to the track, go fetch me water, and now he's here running the shop. So it's the guys that have been here forever, They really support the business. They really manage it. They really take good care of it like it was their own.
Is the C8 your new thing?
So that the C8 is definitely got my interest right now. I think it's exciting, and it kind of revived the excitement for me, kind of like when the R35 GTR came out back in '08, where it's a brand new flat platform, lots of potential, engine, driveline, clutch, the looks, everything is in the right place. It's got all the prerequisite in the making of a good car. So that's why we jumped in it with 2 feet. And obviously right now we're offering turbo kit, fuel system, suspension, all kinds of stuff for it. And with a very limited short amount of time that we had with it, we gained so much success with it because how good the platform is already from the factory. Just to tell you something in short, the stock engine, we push over 1,000 horsepower at the wheels on the stock engine.
Wow, crazy.
It held together. We sent it out to the Rocky Mountain Race Week for 5 days straight. We raced it, drove it from track to track, didn't even change the oil, same tires, same everything. Never broke down. It ran a 10.8, 10.7, 10.4, 10.2, 9.8, 9.7, and then eventually got down to 9.44 with it. Keep in mind, this was on a stock engine, stock transmission. The only addition that we add to it was the turbo kit, fuel system, a clutch, and axles. That's it.
That is
very
insane.
Simple bolt-on. It's insane. And then we ripped the engine apart just to inspect it, and looking at the rods and the rod bearings and everything, just to see how much wear and tear, and to see if we keep in mind the car made over 980 foot-pounds of torque. So we wanted to see if it bent the connecting rods at all. We took it apart. Everything looks perfect. So it's amazing that it could do that from the factory. And then while we have it out, we made a phone call, ordered some pistons and rods for it. I think the package was like $2,800 or $3,000 for rods and pistons. Put it back together, went back on the dyno, made 1119 at the wheels with over 1080 foot-pounds of torque. And that was on the dyno. And then we took it off the dyno, went to the track and ran a 932 with it last weekend.
That is insane.
So I mean,
that's awesome.
It is insane for the short amount of time and how well the car is responding right now. So the only weakness that we have right now in the car is the clutch. We're starting to see some clutch slip. If the clutch didn't slip, the car for sure would be an 8-second car. No doubt. 100%.
How excited are you about the C8 Z06?
Not as much because it's a high compression motor. We don't know how the turbo kit's going to work with that. So right now we just want to focus on the regular C8. And then once the Z06 come out and we have more time to do some R&D, and then I can tell you more about it. But right now it's so new that I feel like it's a great, track vehicle that's already, as is all motor, 670 horsepower. It's great for what it is. But to throw a turbo kit on it, I don't know how much it can take. Even it's a high compression and titanium rods. That combination just doesn't go well with forced induction.
Yeah, I was going to say, so is it in kind of a throwback JDM way? Is it like trying to throw a turbo kit on a DC2 Type R versus a regular GSR? Because wasn't that DC2 Type R motor like almost maxed out from the factory?
Yeah, but at this stage in the game, it's the fuel starvation is going to be the number one thing, and the connecting rod speed is titanium and it's lightweight. It's designed for a high revving engine. This car is going to make a lot of torque with any turbo kit that we're going to put on there. It's the torque that's going to break it. So we feel like it's easier and it's more cost effective to make the kind of power that we're making on a regular C8 engine than the new Z06 engine.
What's the highest of the high for Jotech in the 20 plus years? Like kind of looking back, is it ever like oh man, those were the days? I mean, things are going, business is great now, but do you ever like, man, those are maybe because they were more simple times, or those are just the days?
I kind of appreciate everything, all the lows and highs, right? Because you really don't know how much you appreciate the high unless you have the lows with it. So for us, it's just maintaining. We just want to have that consistent graph that's consistently going up. The spike, yeah, it's cool to see a spike in business, or you do well at the racetrack, you break a record or something like that. But we kind of like the everyday routine. Okay, this is what we got on the schedule. This is what we need to take care of. These are the guys that coming in next week. Let's focus in on each car and deliver it and make sure everybody's happy with the end product, right? So those, to me, the daily routine stuff is what's fun, right? Because I get to leave on time. I don't have to stay
Right.
late.
Right.
Like, the racing, it's not as glamorous for what everybody think it is, right? You know this because in order for you to get to the race on time, you've been preparing the car for the last 2 weeks nonstop for 16, 18 hours a day, and then shipping the car to the racetrack and then you flying out there with no sleep. That's not fun. The only fun part is me getting into the car and make a quick pass and then, seeing what the car run and then, winning the race. That's fun, but it's very short lived, right? So at this age and at where I'm at in life right now, I I like the daily routine because it's very slow, it's very calm, it's very predictable.
Yeah. So what's the lowest of the low?
Ah, lowest of the low. Obviously, when we have a catastrophic failure on the engine or something that we've done that we made a mistake on, that could have been prevented. That to me is very it's disheartening. It's the worst thing that could happen working at a shop or racing, right? So that comes and go. But the wins are more than as long as there's more in the win column than on the loss column, we're good. So our return rate is very, very low. So I like to keep it that way. So as long as we slow things down and just make sure that we take our time, then we don't see too many of those days.
Have you ever been close to shutting the doors?
Absolutely not. It's not an option. It's not in my DNA because I made this promise to my father.
Mm-hmm.
I made this promise to my brother-in-law. I made this promise to the guys that work for me. So at no point in time that ever entered my head.
I mean, 20 years is a long time. That's, I would say, at least for your father, promise fulfilled. For everyone else, I perfectly understand that. Has the pandemic era affected Jotech at all? Because some industries, they just shoot up. Some industries, they come to a screeching halt, but they survive. And as you know, thousands and thousands of businesses did not survive.
Yeah, I think we're very fortunate, even though we're in the service industry, but it's very unique. It's unique in a way that the clientele that we have. This is definitely a very expensive hobby that not everyone can afford. So our clientele that are coming in, they're they're kind of recession and COVID proof in order for them to afford the type of cars that they own and to be able to do the hobby that they want. I mean, you look around these parts that we sell, it's quite expensive. So in order for them to be able to afford this, they're pretty well off. So it really helped us as far as um, having a business that can maintain their car, having a business um, that can modify their cars, when they can't go anywhere. So at this time, you notice everybody's getting into video games. During the pandemic, they could only drive their cars because now it's, they're not working or they're at home. They can finish up their project that they've been working on for the last 2 to 5 years. So it really helped. It really helped us.
Kenny Tran, you've been doing it for a long time, Jotech Racing. I want to thank you for coming on the Hard Parking Podcast.
It's my pleasure talking to you.
People can hit you up at Jotech Motorsports for the business account, and I'll have that, and they can go to jotechracing.com, J-O-Tech, T-E-C-K, yeah.
Yeah, no E. Yeah. Much appreciate you. Thank you for giving me the time. Feel free to call me anytime if you need anything.
I want to thank Kenny Tran for joining the podcast today. That's the first time I've actually had a real conversation with him. How we got hooked up on that is I was digging through my pile of old stuff, my old Jordan stuff, and basically anything and everything that I had moved with from place to place to place ever since the late 90s. My parents gave me this box a couple of years ago because they were tired of carrying around my shit. It was in their attic. So I opened it up a couple months ago, and I'm flipping through, and I have all my magazines, and I came across Turbo magazine. Kenny had signed that for me many years ago. Many years. I don't remember. Maybe it was 2001. It was many years ago, way before I even met my wife. Yeah, I reached out to Jotech and said, hey, you guys interested in this? I don't know if you have one. I don't know if you, whatever. I've kept this one in relatively good shape. And they got back to me and they said, yeah, we talked to Kenny and we would love to have it. Send us your address and we'll hook you up with something. It's like, all right, I really don't want anything, but let me think about this. So I wrote a little letter and said, hey, Kenny, it's Jay Finning. Used to live across the street. You may or may not remember me, but I would really like it if you were able to, come on the episode, come on the podcast. He sent me a friend request on Facebook. We got it connected, and I'm glad we did. Hell of a story. Again, I never really knew him, and it's pretty exciting that he's been able to keep the business going for as long as he has. He still has that drive because, man, it's hard for these shops to stay in business. Even today, there's so much competition, and back then, no one was really messing with you because, we're talking before Fast and Furious. I'm sure California obviously had their shops, and there's always one or two of the shops. Chicago, I think, was it Top Speed? Anybody listening from Chicago confirm? I think Top Speed was the place in Chicago. There was always a couple shops, import shops, but not very many, to have survived from the mid-90s to now. And they're not barely making it. They're doing good. But, man, yellow socks. I had to laugh at that story, but, man, can you imagine that? Imagine that today. Like, how do these kids survive? How do they get through it? And it's not just suck it up and get over it. Man, yellow socks. Every day, yellow socks. Also, a sense of perspective here, short bus. There's a lot of things that we've just grown up with, made fun of, that were benign to us that actually always really meant something to someone. Whether it was gay slurs, racial jokes that we play on each other, even of the same race. Your mama so black jokes, your mama so fat jokes, that is retarded. Those are all things that we take for granted that actually really started with very evil intentions. You have to throw the short bus thing in there, right? You ride the short bus to school that's telling you that you're special and not in the glorified special way. Kenny rode the short bus. I got a chuckle off of that too, but and not that I thought it was funny, but it's like, damn, it's true. And as an adult, as a mature adult, sometimes, what makes me mature? That I don't always say what I'm thinking? That has to be it. Because I can't control my thoughts. I think of some silly, dark, humored shit sometimes. And sometimes I'll think of something that I know is not funny. It's not funny. I can't say it out loud. I can get in a lot of trouble, but I still laugh inside because I think it's funny because I don't mean it. Anyway, I'm kind of getting myself in trouble here, but your perspective on life is based on your experiences. And gosh, yellow socks, short bus, and I had a lot of things growing up too. In a future episode, I'll talk about it a little bit more, especially on the, hopefully we're going to do a Colin Kaepernick in black and white episode of the Car Zing about. I don't know if you guys heard that one. As a reminder, my back is to a major road, although I pretty much edit out all that music. So, anyway. Want to thank Right Honda out of Scottsdale, Arizona. Higher quality detail at Tempe, Arizona, boosterbat.com, foilonline.com. I could have used some stuff from them had I had been more prepared for this last weekend. Tonguetreats.com and Cell Shop Wireless Services. Can't forget The Credit Mix. Patreon business supporter Kuya Automotive out of Winter Garden, Florida. Mark Stoneman, Catherine Cox, Eddie Ramos, Richard Graves, Byron Jones, and Bo Chung, the Patreon supporters. If you're in a position to help the podcast upgrade, join the Patreon for as little as $3 a month and get access to bonus audio as well as show swag. If you're interested in picking up a Hard Parking Podcast shirt, email the show or send me a message on any of the social media platforms you find me on. Also, I did finally release the Honda Civic 2022 hatchback video, so go and find that on the Hard Parking Podcast, Hard Parking Media YouTube page. You can email the show at hardparkingpodcast@gmail.com. Follow me on Instagram at jfinning, that's JHAEPFENNING, or jtravels, that's JHAE_travels. Join the Hard Parking Violations Facebook group. If it's your first time, say hello so that I know you're there. I can't grow without you telling the world how great this show is. Let's do this. Let's grow this thing together. And we'll talk to you all next week.
Shut up!
Hey, this is Levi Epps, hashtag Mr. Financial Freedom of The Credit Mix, here with a special offer for Hard Parking Podcast fans. If you've been living with less than perfect credit for having evictions, late payments, bankruptcies, doesn't matter what it is. If it's something that negatively impacts your credit score and you're not able to get approvals for certain things, or maybe you got to pay large deposits and high interest rates, we don't want that to be you anymore. We have a program that will legally get negative items off of your credit report and keep them off. And we have a special code for a free consultation to see if we can help you. Text HP Credit to 737-4CREDIT. That's HP Credit to 737-427-3348. Let's get you back on the road to financial freedom.
Are you tired of blowing out your back at the bathtub while washing your dog, or subjecting your canine to a water torture bath while leashed up to a post outside? Now there's a far more effective way to wash your pet while saving your back and keeping your dog happy. It's called Booster Bath, a portable bathtub on legs. Head over to boosterbath.com, one word, and pick one up. Available in 3 sizes, this tub system features a drain, a soap cubby, and water controlling wand. This tub conveniently breaks down to be stored when not in use. Want to save 10% on your first time purchase? Head over and sign up today to make that happen. Boosterbath.com.